Hi, this is Stephen Cohen. I'm with Gillison Global. We are brokered by eXp Realty, which enables us to do business in all 50 states and in 24 countries around the world. One of those countries being the UK. And really, I'm so grateful that we have a listing for a castle in the beautiful medieval city of Edinburgh, Scotland. And by the way, it is Edinburgh, right? A lot of people here in the States might call it Edinburgh, but I believe I'm pronouncing it correctly when I call it Edinburgh, correct? Right? So if you haven't visited Edinburgh, it's really it's like traveling back in time. And so traveling back in time, we're going to do that right now. We're fortunate enough to have the owners of a 600-year-old, meticulously and lovingly restored castle just on the outskirts of Edinburgh. And also with us is their esteemed architect, Lauren McNeil. Lauren has a history of restoring these kinds of properties. He is an expert at it, and they came together and did one heck of a job, and it took quite a while, and I'm going to let them tell us all about it. Before we get started, let's just get a little bit of background on your history, Dawn and Martin. So this is Dawn and Martin Robertson and Lauren McNeil. So Dawn and Martin are husband and wife. They've raised 4 children in this castle. And just to get a little bit of background, Dawn, Martin, did either of you grow up either in a castle or with the means to purchase a castle at some point? Do you have that kind of a background? Do you have royalty in your blood?
No, absolutely not. We grew up in very modest, normal homes in the northeast of Scotland. So very normal upbringing, I would say. And we as kids, we were brought up to know the value of money, to know that you have to work hard and earn money. So we learned that from a young age. To save and to budget, and quite a normal upbringing.
Well, that's super to hear. So really self-made, I guess we could say. They came from humble beginnings, and yet here they are in this gorgeous home. They call it a home, I call it a castle. They kind of laugh when I call it a castle, but to them it's their home. So you grew up in humble beginnings. Did you grow up in the same town, the same vicinity? Did you know each other growing up?
We did grow up in the same town, but we got to know each other when we were about 14 at high school. So we've been friends since then. We were not really sweethearts quite that young, but we've been friends for a long time.
And you became sweethearts when?
A few false starts, but got together properly in our late 20s.
Late 20s.
So I used to help Dawn with her chemistry homework at school, chemistry experiments. So I was very studious at school, working very hard, never going to parties or probably never invited to parties, but just worked very hard. Whereas Dawn was doing a lot of partying at school, but also doing, working very hard as well. And
Well, yeah, you both went on to some really good careers. You went to university. You both went. Did you go to the same university?
No, I went to St Andrews.
Ah, beautiful.
Yeah, I went to Strathclyde University, which is in Glasgow.
In Glasgow. Yeah. Okay, but you stayed together, or you weren't dating yet, right? You were just kind of friends still.
Just friends, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you went to university, and then. Martin, you went on to a career in finance, and Dawn, if I'm correct, you went on to become a lawyer, right? Or what do you call them in Scotland?
No, I wasn't a lawyer. I worked in the electricity industry as a business analyst, and I also worked for Mars Confectionery.
Okay, I'm way off on that. I don't know why I thought you were a lawyer, but that's okay.
I would have liked to have been a lawyer. If I could do things over, I might have been a lawyer.
Well, so somewhere along the way, were you both working in Scotland?
No, I started off. I had the opportunity to go to the States. I was offered a PhD in in Canada, actually, Vancouver. But I worked for a little while as a trainee actuary in Scotland, and then moved down to London. Joined an investment bank in London. And I think at the time Dawn was already in London. So yeah, we did have a period of crossover when we were both in London. Before I moved out to Hong Kong, I got an opportunity to go out to Hong Kong and be a junior trader with an investment bank. Really interesting. It's a great place. Asia, just discovering all these different countries and cultures. So yeah, hard work, but really, really interesting and enjoyable.
And Dawn was with you at that point?
No, Dawn came out later. So after I'd been out for a couple of years, Dawn and I hooked up when we were back in Scotland at Christmas, and I thought it'd be a good idea if we gave it a go and got together. And so in 2002, Dawn came out to Hong Kong, and I took her to New Zealand and proposed to her. And thankfully, she said yes.
Didn't you promise her a castle when you proposed to her?
Yeah. So that was 2002.
Was just a dream at that point. And we got married the following year. So we came from Hong Kong back to Scotland and got married in 2003.
You have 4 kids. Were any or all of them raised or born in Hong Kong?
All of them.
All of them born in Hong Kong?
Yes.
Interesting. And then at some point, Martin, your career must have been going very well. Dawn, were you working in Hong Kong as well?
I did before the kids were born, but once they were born, I was lucky enough to be able to stay at home and focus on them.
Yeah, no doubt. 4 kids, it's a lot. So that's great. But Martin's career took off, and at some point, you're living in Hong Kong. At some point, how does it come about? You wanted to go back to Scotland, I guess, at some point, and you figured you'd want to buy a home in Scotland. It's where you were from. Was the castle always, or a castle? Was a castle always part of the plan? How does that come about?
I don't think we had ever thought that we would buy a castle, or we certainly hadn't talked about it. But I think probably the reason, for me anyway, was after being out of Scotland for so long, in London first, then in Hong Kong, and having had the children, I think I started to feel a call to come back home, and a wish for my children to understand their roots and feel a sense of belonging within the culture and history of the country, of all the generations that came before them in their family. And I think the history of the house, a property like this with such a rich history, I think that was probably the appeal, was me wanting to have that sense of roots for the children. But it's perfect that it's in Edinburgh, because Edinburgh is at the same time extremely Scottish and extremely cosmopolitan. So whilst the kids now do feel proudly Scottish, they've never lost the international outlook that they gained in Hong Kong, which is also exactly how. So
what I think is most curious is, at some point in Hong Kong, you recognized you wanted to come back. Was it, hey, we've got some means now. If we go back to Scotland, let's buy a castle? Were you specifically looking for a castle, or just a real nice house?
Yeah, we were never looking for, specifically looking for a place this big and grand.
That was my fault.
Yes.
The castle was your fault, Lorne?
My fault completely.
So we from Hong Kong, we would come back once or twice per year back to Scotland to see our families and everything. And one year, Dawn thought, let's look at some property, because we'll probably come back one day. And so we actually first looked at a different property which we really liked, and it needed a lot of work. And we were told that there was an architect who had produced plans for the work that could be done, and they recommended that we call this architect up, and this was Lorne. So this was the first dealing with Lorne. So unfortunately, we really liked those plans, so much so that we actually bid for this other house. It went to a sealed envelope closing process, and we missed out on that one, unfortunately. So,
well, not unfortunately.
Well, we were gutted at the time, and we just thought this is a disaster. But Lorne, I remember Lorne said to us, plenty more fish in the sea.
Clouds of silver linings.
Yeah,
that's right. And a short time later, Lorne called us up one day. Called us up. We were back in Hong Kong. He said, "I've got somewhere else. You must come and see this place, Woodhall House."
Yeah, I was.
There it is. That's a great introduction to Lorne.
mm-hmm.
I'm curious. Lorne, did you come across? So in other words, Martin and Dawn, were you working with an agent in Edinburgh with a realtor at the time?
Well, funnily enough, I'd actually met them in Hong Kong because I visit Hong Kong, China, Singapore, Dubai, and present property opportunities. I talk for about half an hour, and then I must play golf for a week. So it's a no-brainer deal. And Martin and Dawn came to one of the presentations I had, and that was our first introduction. Yes, they were gutted when they missed the other opportunity, but I did say clouds of silver linings, and the right property will come along, and when it does come along, they will not regret for 1 minute the fact they missed out before. This did come along, and I was sort of mesmerized. I was enchanted by it because it was a lovely house with extraordinary history. And I sent out photographs, and Martin and Dawn came back and they saw it, and they, like me, were taken by it, and it started this remarkable journey, this great synergy of friendship. They're a passionate journey of building houses. They are all-consuming, and we're so glad that we also had Martin's father, who was involved in construction up in Aberdeen, and he was a great pillar of strength for Martin and Dawn. And we just worked tirelessly over several years. They had no rush to come back, and the house was systematically taken apart. It was rebuilt, and part of that was really to make the castle into a home of charm, a home of intimacy, a home that their family lifestyle could adapt to and enjoy and elicit great pleasure from. And that is the trick to these old houses. We had lots of ideas of where should the kitchen be. This room, for instance, we're in now, was 4 small rooms. We made it into one large space because the hub of any house is the kitchen, living, dining space. It's where people gravitate to most of the time. But it also oozed in charm elsewhere. It effervesced with charm in the drawing room. All the bedrooms are large spaces throughout the house. And we made them smaller by taking off parts of them to make ensuite bathrooms, dressing rooms. And all in all, it was just fun. We just had lots of fun doing it over 2 stages. The first stage was just consolidating the ruin, consolidating it as a 16th century ruin by eradicating all the rot, by thermally insulating it. Thermal insulating is a huge issue with energy problems now. So this is a house, a castle, that has high levels of insulation, the floors, the walls, the ceilings, very high energy efficient boilers. So it's not an expensive house to operate. It's also wonderfully located. It's near the airport. And it's, from my perspective, and Don's Martin's, not so much Don, is it's so close to all the great golf courses of Scotland, Muirfield, St Andrews. They're all within an hour's drive. It's in 25 minutes, half an hour from the airport. So it's a great, great location in Edinburgh. And to have somewhere that is probably, 5 miles from the city centre, surrounded by green parkland, a river in the back garden. It's just, it's, I get very jealous. I'm not a jealous person. Every time I get here, I get so pissed off because I'm seeing this wonderful house. I just wish perhaps possibly one day I would love to have myself. I can't make an offer, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Listen, you can build them from scratch probably.
Well, we've done lots of these houses. We restored the Royal Palace of Scotland. We've done many country house projects, indeed many for American clients from Hong Kong, Asia, all around the world, because really what's great about what we're doing now is a great means of communication. I was chatting to Don and Martin from Hong Kong on Zoom calls as work was going on. We went to bathroom and kitchen shops in Edinburgh that were also in Hong Kong. So, you know, it is a global marketplace now from which we can restore and refurbish country houses, which is just absolutely ideal.
That's right. And, you know, this particular property, it may be somebody's primary family home. At some point, it could also be it is a work of art and a collector, a home collector, you know, in a world-class city and a world-class property. It is a work of art. You talked a little bit about the restoration, and that, you know, it took several years. If I remember in our conversations, I think it took about 5 years to restore the property. Yeah. And meticulously, you know, I'm looking at that background behind you, and that is, you know, not a 1600s kitchen, right? It is not. It is absolutely modern. And I'm glad you went into a little bit more of detail, you know, of how the property was brought up to the 21st century, because it is a 21st century home.
Yeah.
And it's funny when you think back and what that must have been like in the early days, right? In the 1600s. It must have been, I guess back then, maybe it was luxurious, but living in a castle back then was nothing like what you guys have done here now.
No, castles were just stone walls. They had lanterns, they had animals to keep the places warm. But apart from that, it was probably cutting edge at that time. But things evolve, time moves on, and what people expect now is indulgence. And this has created a wonderfully charming, intimate home, which anyone can indulge in, because it has beauty, it has majesty, it has a royal past.
It has majesty and a royal past. That's a very good way to put it. And in addition to the majesty and the royal past of yesteryear, you've added quite a few amenities. You've got a tennis court, right? You probably didn't have that back then. You've got the hot tub. You know, talk about a little bit of the amenities that this property has. We're going to put many of the photos that we have. We're going to put in the liner notes as part of this interview, and so people will be able to see the interior as well as the grounds of the property. But if you could talk a little bit about some of the amenities in the house that are 21st century and bring that modern feel to the history of the property.
Yeah, well, you know, starting with the outside of the house, it's the kids love it here. We all do, and our dogs do as well. There's so much space to run around, you know.
At 8 acres, right? 8 acres of space.
Acres, almost eight acres in total. So you know, we kept a nice big lawn. We've got some rugby posts out there, and you know, football goals, trampoline, and you know, the kids love running around out there. Especially the tennis court as well, like you mentioned. It's has a 4G all-weather surface, so even in the Scottish winter, you can go out there. As our kids get older, they seem to like to congregate out there and play music and play tennis and football and so on.
4-car garage.
Yeah, exactly.
4-car garage, and even got EV charging stations.
Yeah, that's right. One of the things that I remember saying to Lauren is, you know, from Hong Kong while we were communicating at a distance, I remember saying to him, I can't be cold in that house, you know, in that Scottish climate. We're living in the tropics. It needs to be warm. So Lauren already mentioned the insulation, but also we have a big plant room where we've got two sort of almost industrial strength pumps that power every bedroom has an ensuite shower, and we can run all of the showers at the same time, 2 floors up, without losing any pressure or any heat. That's worked perfectly, which is
even for a modern home here. That's a big bonus.
Yes.
You know, always hot water, always full pressure.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's very warm and comfortable. We put in networking cables and Sonos and alarm systems with CCTV, but it's all been done so discreetly that all the modern comforts are there, but what you see and feel is, you know, a traditional Scottish home on a large scale.
So we are coming to the end of this interview. You know, one question that I'm curious about personally is when you first came there, or even now, even currently, is there a sense of that spirit, or do you feel the history and the people that have been walking through, the royalty, whoever was walking through these, because they were members of the royal court? It's just touching the stone on the outside, that sense of history. Do you feel that vibe when you're there, just living there?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, I'm busy with the 4 kids and the 2 dogs and so on, but sometimes when I have the time to just sit and actually acknowledge where I am, and particularly through in the drawing room, as Martin mentioned, maybe looking up at the ceiling and just really reflecting on how old it is and everything that will have gone on beneath. I do feel it. And I was really heartened to be loaned a book, which is a publication of the accounts of one of the previous owners from the late 1700s. And I could see what he was meticulous in keeping records on what he spent his money on. And it was really heartening because he was spending money on the same things that we spend money on. He was buying some wine, he was planting in the garden beans and oak trees. He paid someone to try to cull the crows that live in the big Scots pine tree above our apple trees, and they steal them. So I understand his motivation for that, and it did feel like, yeah, we're continuing the legacy of those that have gone before us, but it's not in some artificial forced way. It's just what you do when you live here.
When I work with ancient monuments, we always remind our clients that they're merely custodians of the history of the property, and they're to ensure it's passed on to the next owner with the same aplomb, dignity, and respect.
You know what, Lauren, that's a great way to close it. They are custodians for the next owner of this property, and the next lucky owners. Those that are out there that have the means, please reach out to me, Stephen, Stephen, at Gillezan Team, Gilezan Team, TEAM.com. And we will be in touch with you and letting you know what it would take to be the next owner, the next custodian in history of this grand castle known as Woodhall House. Is there anything else that either Dawn, Martin, or Lauren that you would like to contribute?
I would say one thing a few people have mentioned over the years. I think when they come into Woodhall House for the first time and they see the size of the place, you know, it looks like this big castle. But when they get inside, they can see that although there's almost 40 rooms in here, it feels lived in. It feels like a family home. It doesn't feel like some massive, empty, cold castle. It's quite the opposite. And quite a few people have picked up on that, haven't they?
Yeah.
It's a great point, Martin. You know, even the photographs and the decor, the photographs of the decor, of the decorations, you can see that it's a home. It doesn't feel intimidating when you look at the pictures. The grounds are just beautiful, but not intimidating. So it's a great point. And I think that's coming across. People have mentioned it to you, and hopefully it is coming across in the photos as well, so that anybody that is interested, we will make arrangements for a visit. So again, in the liner notes, you will have all the details of how to reach out to us. Lauren, feel free to plug your company.
Well, as I say, I've worked with many clients from across the water. I've been there many times most years to play golf. I love your country. I love your people. And in St Andrews, we've done many houses in Edinburgh for American clients who just love our country. There's a great empathy between Scotland and America. Many of your great pioneers are Scottish. So we're very happy to invite and welcome anyone from your waters across here to enjoy Scotland for what it is, our beautiful country.
And to reach you, it is lornemcneillarchitects.com. Correct?
Yeah, just Google Lorne Architect.
Lorne Architect, yeah. It's a good website. I recommend visiting it. Okay. Anything else before we hop off? Look at that kitchen behind you. That is not a kitchen of a castle from the 1600s. It is now.
Right.
So thank you all for being here today. We'll continue to do what we do on our end. And if there are any questions from any viewers, please reach out and we will be in touch.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.